and I'm going to introduce each of them one by one. May I introduce Reverend Bonnie Evans Hill, a coordinator of UK Coalition working with the UN office.
One member of a family may arrive in Germany by plane, and somebody else arrives in Greece by boat, and somebody else in Italy. And they're all part of one family, but because of the Dublin Agreement, even if they're given asylum, they're prevented from family reunion. So you sometimes have unaccompanied minors who arrive seeking to join family members, say in the UK, but they're prevented from doing so because of the Dublin Agreement. So you have separation of family.
And also, may I introduce an Aarmaanta, Hassan Noor Said, known as Aarmaanta, British Somali songwriter, former UNICEF ambassadors, whose song about Tahrib and has gone viral.
Social media definitely has a role to play. The diaspora going back, and in some cases, going back with money, getting priority in certain jobs, getting priority in who they marry.
And may I also introduce Zak Salad, a British Somali actor and filmmaker, currently producing documentary about the prevention of Tahrib. And he's the one of the most potential creative Somali youth.
Throughout my whole research and my presentation in terms of my data collection for my documentary, I met many youth who honestly are complaining about lack of transparency when it comes to Tahrib and its myth and the legends that are attached and associated with it. Tahrib isn't something new, but the idea that the youth are far more better in other parts of the world than they are in their home countries is an issue that has scrooged a generation. And I believe that there's members of high positions of power and authority here today in this meeting that will address that issue, hopefully in the near future. But I want to go into the points of how the youth are being coerced into trafficking and how they're being deceived by members who are led to believe to be supporting them. That those are members of the diaspora like myself. I myself take responsibility and acknowledgement when it comes to how I present myself as a filmmaker on social media and online. I know that there's youth who are in places like Somalia, places like Ethiopia and Kenya that watch people like me, and they see an image of a young man living in the Western world, in Europe. And that image, from what I've heard in my documentary and in my research, has inspired many people to risk their lives. This brings me to the latter point that I want to mention, which is communal responsibility and responsibility sharing when it comes to this topic of Tahrib. This isn't just an issue that is only left for politicians and members of states. It's an issue that's left to family members and households. And that issue is something that I believe collectively, as we as Somalis and we as the international community working together, can bridge.
Her Highness Ambassador Mariam Yassin Hagi Yussuf, who has been appointed as a special envoy for children and migration since 2015. And she works tirelessly in saving many children.
I just wanted to highlight that, well, I took this role as the special envoy 5 years ago. And to be honest, at the time, it was very quite unique because I wanted to work with the government on children issue. I was coming out of a personal tragedy. I lost my husband in a terrorist attack in Nairobi. And I just thought that I just wanted to work with children, and because if children are given the opportunity, and especially the opportunity to learn the Holy Quran in the correct and traditional way, then we can prevent terrorism.
That contributes to what I would consider to be trafficking within the European Union. But even before that, what we have is this attitude of we don't want anyone coming. That's sheer racism. So there's this lack of, we're not going to rescue people in the Mediterranean. And the reason we're not going to do that is because we don't want them to actually enter the Mediterranean in the first place. So we're going to prevent rescue because we don't want them crossing. It doesn't really make sense. And then people that happen to be found are then taken over to the Libyan Coast Guard. So what we have is the European Union is funding the Libyan Coast Guard, as well as, last year in November, I came up with a figure of 26 concentration camps in Libya, which we heard described so horrifically by His Excellency the Ambassador. So we're paying to keep people out of Europe, and then there's also different countries, and in order to prevent crossing of borders, different walls have been set up, or border guards have been set up. So we've really tightened things up. What that means is that for people who are traffickers, is that there's more and more profit in trafficking. If you make it dangerous and you make it harder, then they can charge more, and their business increases. Whereas if actually we instead provided safe migration corridors, which a number of people, including there's something called the Council of European Churches and the Churches Commission for Migration in Europe, but they've been working with other faith leaders as well. They're advocating something called safe passage, where we have safe migration corridors where people can move from place to place in a safe manner, and ending what's called the Dublin Agreement, so that once you enter Europe, you have asylum in Europe.
If I have a European passport, I can freely travel anywhere I want to. But if you have an African passport or Middle Eastern passport, you can't go anywhere. So there are so many double standards and really issues that really drive these young people. And
hello, guys. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. His Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zak Salad. I am a British Somali filmmaker based in London. I hope you can all hear me very well. I got into the knowledge seeking of what Tahrib is after my first film was selected by the DTLA Film Festival to represent Somalia for the 7 enemy nations. After that, I decided to do a feature-length documentary that tackled the issue of Tahrib. It was my responsibility as a filmmaker to use my craft and my art to express honest and true recounts of people's lives. These camps that are designed to desensitize, dehumanize, and also to sell off these people as if they are human cattle.
Looking at my 20 years experience on migration, he said, sorry, but I have a gap in the government at the moment, and I want someone to work in my office on migration issues, and not only in the prevention of Tahrib, but also to take part in it was the time of Valletta, the Valletta promises that you probably remember. So then I took over this role, and it has really taken all my time. I'm a diaspora myself, I'm a migrant, I have been internally displaced. And I've been working on Tahrib in Italy at the moment, at the receiving end of Lampedusa. And the stories we were hearing about the brothers and sisters from Somalia that were tortured in Libya was just overwhelming. And at some point I took a break just to come back to it after 5 years. So then in 2018, I've been joined by my very good friend and brother, Ali Said Fiqi, and went together to Libya. And I remember when we went to Libya, there was not so many people that were interested to risk their life there. And it was myself and Ali at the time. And I remember at some point, Ali telling me, Mariam, take the first group back to Somalia. You are a mother of 2. And I cannot just think of the risk I'm going through and you being with me. And I'm really I was so much thankful to Ali at the time as a brother. I listened to him. I said, I will take the first group and I'll prepare the ground for more and more return. And it has been really a struggle. It has been personally touching at the very personal level. Recently, one of my family members, a very close cousin, embarked on the Tahrib. And I remember I was very angry at him. But sometimes you really ask yourself, what is driving our youth? Most of the time, we know the issues of insecurity, lack of job opportunity. But what I really wanted to highlight is just sometimes even youth that have those opportunities are also embarking on the Tahrib, with this idea that life is better abroad. Sometimes just to find themselves after 3 years in Libya being tortured, and going through paying ransom and telling you, they call me Mama Mariam and telling me, Mama Mariam, I came back after 3 years. I've been tortured. My family paid up to $18,000. And all what I wanted was an opportunity to travel, a job in the government, and going back with my studies. And after 3 years, I got that. And he asked me, was it really worth it to go through all that, coming back after 3 years? So these are also, the personal experiences that the returning migrant go through. And as Ambassador Ali mentioned, we are also working at COVID has really delayed the safe return, voluntary safe return back to Somalia because of COVID. But now we are starting, especially with Libya. We have already returned from Tanzania, and I wish to highlight that there's only not the route towards Europe or towards the Middle East, but it's also the one within Africa, South Africa. And our young people don't even reach there. They're arrested in Tanzania. And we have, last year, we have managed to establish a dialogue with the Tanzanian government through IOM and through our diplomatic channel. We repatriated almost 70 that have been in jail for 10 years. And the sentence was between 3 and 5. And these were Somali of all kinds. I would like to conclude with something that a young Somali man said to us and upon returning. He said, I was sold when I was leaving Puntland. He said, now that I go back, I was already sold. So this is really to make us understand that the human traffickers are back home all the way to Libya, going through Yemen and so on.
And also one thing I would recommend is having a spokesperson for the Somali communities or the diaspora in general, a spokesperson who's affiliated with high members in press and in corporate media, so they're able to counter these things. When certain issues arise, we have somebody or a group of people or a team, perhaps even a firm, that has a key role in making sure that image and perspective is shown in a very accurate way. So that's one thing. And another thing that I would like to say is using celebrity power in whatever capacity that you might have it. Me, I'm a filmmaker, I'm early starting out in the film industry. But like, hajjalaha ina nishiago, anigo or wiil dhalinyaro ah oo Ingiriiska degan magacii muuqaal sameystay waxaa jeclaan haddana niskiin sharxo magacayga waxa waaye liibaan cagmadhige aabahey waxa waaye wariye oo cagmadhiga la dhaho oo maasha Allah shaqo badan culus qabtay oo dadkiisii dalkiisii wadankiisa wax u qabanayo anigana aan kala qayb qaadanayo shaqadaas so waxaa jeclaan magacaygii muuqaalkayga anigoo liibaan cagmadhiga ah inaa isticmaalo inaa tuso bulshada Soomaaliyeed adduunka dan tahriibka inuu sahayn wax caadi ah inay tahay dad badan oo jiro oo ka faa'iideysanayo dhibaatada gelinayo dad jiro oo ku taajiray oo lacag badan ku sameeyay taasna inay noo tahay wax oo anaka inaa qaadano kalsooni ay noo tahay inaa dadkeen walaalaheen inaa caawino alxamdulillah fursad wanaagsan aan helay inaa ani aaba isku wada shaqeyno beginning of the year markii uu COVID-19 ka dhacay pandemic oo sameyno arrimo oo bulshada oo u dhigayno si ay iskaga ilaali lahaayeen COVID-19 protectionkooda and intay tahriibkeedii ku jiraan iyo adduunyada kale meelkay wada joogaan so waxaa dhihi lahay dadka Soomaaliyeed oo adduunka dhan wada joogo isku wada imaado garabka isqabsada iscaawiya wax isku tara adinkana ahaada dadka oo codkooda iyo magacoodii muuqaalkooda isticmaalo inay ka hortagaan waxa dan xun oo Soomaalida adduunka dhan ku dhibayso intaas ku soo xiri lahay waa maasanta
people are asking during your 5 years and as an ambassador as an envoy and share with us a moment that made you sad and some moments that made you happy and if you could share with us please that's what
yes I think the saddest moment was I was supporting the Somali embassy in Johannesburg. And we were held by the Muslim community in, if I'm not wrong, either in Zimbabwe or Mozambique. So we managed to bring back home 19 young men that were imprisoned, but one refused. Okay. And he said, I'd rather stay in prison than go back to Somalia. So that was really for the ambassador at the time. And me was just not only shocking, but also devastating. because, as a mother, as a citizen of Somalia, as a Somali former civil society, you really ask yourself, where did we go wrong for our son to say such a thing? So it's still, when I think about it, I still get emotional. But, people, as Aarmaanta was saying, you cannot force. It's all voluntarily. And the happiest moment was recently. We managed to get out from the hands of the human traffickers. We work closely with IOM. And this young man could barely talk, could barely say something. I was sent his videos. He was almost getting, almost paralyzed. And I remember telling the dad, don't show this video to the mother, because I know the way I could have, I could not sleep last night and that night. And that young man, now he's healthy. We managed to get him to Tripoli. I mean, thanks to Allah. It's Allah doing, we are just these soldiers. But it was just amazing that now we are communicating, and I'm praying every day and night to see him back to Mogadishu one of these days. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much indeed for the host, and we appreciate your time, the valuable time you've given us. One of the most valuable thing one can give you is their time, because it's part of their life. And we also thank those people who followed us from Facebook and YouTube, and we say thank you for your time. And we thank all the youth who are working so hard from the back office. And thank you very much indeed, and pleasure to have you with us.